Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the next 15 or 20 minutes with me to review our slide deck, Planning Effective Professional Learning, that will shift practice, which will help us deliver engaging and effective professional learning sessions this year. But before we start prepping our presentations, we first need to think about and understand professional learning culture. Professional learning is not just something that is important for teachers, it's important for all of those who are involved in education. Professional learning that includes participants from support, teaching, administration, etc., at the same time can help bridge the divisions. And when differing groups work together, there's a greater chance of understanding each other's work, which will help us achieve WIG number 1. And it will also forge bonds between the groups to work towards a common purpose. Developing a culture of continuous learning and modeling the use of personal learning networks will be key to engaging scholars and educational partners. This all aligns to our blueprint, and you'll see why in just a few minutes. First, we're going to review our agenda and our learner outcomes. We'll, of course, go through our mission, vision, and values and understand our goals, what we want to achieve, understand our professional learning vision, the power of professional learning, know the characteristics of professional learning spaces, best practices, and the why professional learning is integral to scholar success. Our mission and vision really holds true in our professional learning culture, because if we are learning together and inspiring each other to do good work and find resources and tools to engage scholar learning, we are also working on ourselves to be engaged and present in each professional learning session, which will ultimately achieve our WIG. Scholars graduate. 100% of our scholars will graduate. And we are also lifelong learners, so we will be embodying our vision statement as we are learning and growing together. Our values must hold true in professional learning spaces as well, because we need to have proper communication, respect for each other, integrity. Working together in a common place will exhibit teamwork. And if we are doing all of these things, we will see an increase in scholar achievement. So let's move on to what we want to achieve holistically as a school. We first want to increase coherence, connections, and company culture. This all has to do with our WIG number 1. We also want staff to have personalized learning to support their growth. That's why we're doing that Wednesday cadence and having professional learning embedded during our Wednesday afternoon early release, and they can pick what pathway they want to gravitate towards. And first, we need the systems and the structures to create the enabling conditions for meaningful change. And that's holds true in our strategic plan. So kind of breaking it down a little bit more with coherence, culture, and connectedness, all this aligns to our blueprint for success, and if we have effective professional learning spaces, we will achieve both WIGs, because our staff will feel supported and appreciated and connected with each other, because there's time built into our schedule to have them reflect and pair up or partner up to work on lesson planning or problem of practice and review data to ensure our scholars are making progress. So our professional learning culture will really tie in nicely to our blueprint. Our professional learning vision was developed by myself, Deborah LaCroix, JJ, and Katina. And our vision is to create and deliver a comprehensive, data-driven, and collaborative professional learning strategy that develops each individual Compass employee so that they can support the diverse needs of our scholars and families. The diverse needs of our scholars and families really resonates with me, because that means we're personalizing our learning and we're personalizing the space for each teacher to engage in. So they're working on their own personal growth, and that really ties in nicely to our growth plan. Moving on to the why, what are the benefits of effective professional learning? Professional learning enhances overall learning and empowers teachers to take charge of their own personal growth, professional growth, and it allows teachers to reflect, which will ultimately support scholar learning. It's teacher-driven, promotes empowerment, and aims to decrease isolation. So those who might feel like they want to work alone or they kind of want to hide out, our professional learning strategy and our Wednesday cadence will help them, or rather force them, to engage in learning with others. So it won't be just a individualized approach with the pathways. We're also having them engage in conversations about what we're seeing in terms of our scholar population. What's the data telling us? So in professional learning spaces, teachers will use the time to share information with each other, connect with others in our organization, find resources, solicit ideas, obtain feedback, maybe on lesson plans that they have, or what they're seeing in their data, getting another set of eyes on it, and ultimately getting support from one another. So because this is job embedded, they're doing their pathway during the Wednesday cadence. They also are doing data-driven conversations and having time for async work on their pathway. This gives us greater access to more learning opportunities because they don't have to do research alone or on their own outside of Compass hours. So we'll have higher levels of self-efficacy. It's designed to enhance teachers' instructional practices. There are going to be shared beliefs and understandings resulting in a common goal. Increased collaboration and confidence among staff. So again, that ties back into our WIG number 1. And ultimately, if we have these things in place, we're going to see increased academic achievement, which ties in nicely to WIG number 2. So there are other areas within job embedded professional learning that we can explore, which is peer coaching. That goes into our growth plan, collaborative reflections. Again, there's time in that Wednesday cadence where they have collaborative time built in. Mentoring, we're getting that support through Learning Center Collaborative or through coaches. Model lessons where they can jump into their peers' Zoom rooms or whatever learning platform they're utilizing to see how they are engaging their scholar population and take those ideas and bring it back to their own lesson. Instructional coaching, we have that in place. We have about 14-ish STs through each coach. We have 3 coaches, so there's going to be a big group going through instructional coaching this year, and they can also determine if they want that through their growth plan. And then grade level or content collaboration meetings, and that really is a good way to talk about scholar data. How are we doing? What standards are being missed? How can we work together as a group to support scholar learning? That's it. This is kind of what the online team has been modeling for a very long time. So there are a lot of pieces within professional learning that we're already doing. So what type of professional learning may not work? You might already know the answer, but it's that sit and get learning. So presenters who deliver information at participants is ineffective. It also does not establish trust or buy-in. So participants may be resistant to try something new. So it's really important to engage learners in the process through collaborative talks, breakout rooms, polls, chats, mic, what have you. We'll get more into that in a few minutes with our best practices. So some basic tips for professional learning when you're delivering content is make sure that you're in a space where there's limited background noise. Of course things happen, but just best practice, try to be in a quieter space. but we'll just need to be respectful of one another and understand that there may be some distractions if, once in a while, and that's okay. But in terms of when you're ready to deliver content, try to limit the background noise if you're able to, and try to dress appropriately. I know since we're working at home, it's hard to put on a professional feel when you're ready to deliver information, but this will develop trust, and especially when you're using positive and appropriate language as you deliver the content as well. Another best practice is to add a social emotional learning check-in. And again, this goes hand in hand with our blueprint. This will build community and aims to meet our WIG number 1. So just a quick check-in when people are coming into the room. We'll give them the space to interact with and self-reflect on their own social emotional approach, like how they're showing up to today's professional learning session. You also always want to review our mission, vision, and values and norms. So make sure you all agree on the norms that you set in place as well. That will establish trust and buy-in, and it will also have them connect with one of those norms and make sure that they're actually engaged and present during your professional learning session. So reviewing all of these things reminds participants why we're here, where we're going, and what we all need to embody. Next, always provide an agenda going through these main points. Where have we been? Where are we going? And how will we end? A nice touch is to play music as guests enters the room, but you just want to make sure it's appropriate. So if it's social emotional learning related, you might want to consider playing calming music. But if your topic is trying to increase engagement, you might want to get your team pumped up in that dancing mood. So you might want to play something, hard rock or what have you. So just keep that in mind as you are planning your professional learning session. You also want to establish a routine so they know what's expected as they enter in your professional learning sessions. So you're just going to give an overall taste of what they will learn, perhaps add this information in the calendar invite or one pager so they can peruse the information prior to the session. You want to have exit tickets to make sure that your professional learning sessions were relevant and effective. So you can use this information and feedback to gauge what is needed next time and plan for more effective and engaging sessions if that is the case based on the feedback. You also want to incorporate breaks if it is a longer session over 90 minutes, and make sure you stick to those times because that is going to establish trust and buy-in. And same thing with ending and starting on time. You want to start on at the same time that has been listed on the calendar invite. Of course, maybe a minute going over is fine if people are trying to get in with the link. If there was an error, no problem. But make sure you definitely end on time. This, again, will establish trust and buy-in. You also want to think of your audience. So put yourself in their shoes. If you were a participant in this session, how would I want to experience this session? You also want to think of presentation design, have a generic background theme. It shouldn't draw attention away from the information. Few bullet points. You want to use keywords to express the content. You don't want to have any transitions. It becomes very distracting. And then any graphics that you have, make sure they're relevant to the content and that it's not overbearing, it's not overwhelming. So just make sure you limit photos or graphics. Next, you want to ensure that you are incorporating engagement activities such as polls, having your audience respond to open-ended questions in the chat or getting off the mic. You also want to ask for feedback to check for understanding, maybe a fist to 5 they can do on camera, or they can give you a reaction. So this is going to help you break up the lecture-based presentation and have your audience more engaged. Another best practice is we want to model. As you know, adult learners don't like to be talked at. So they want to have time to reflect and engage in the session with you. And they want to see what the strategy looks like in practice. So they want to see it applied, modeled, and then think about how they can use that information and apply it in their classroom setting or whatever setting environment that they have that they're utilizing. And then after you model, give them time to apply what they have learned in the session, maybe having a think, pair, share, or having reflections in breakout rooms. So after you show them how to do something, make sure they have time to actually think about how they can incorporate it in their environment. As I said before, allowing for feedback is critical. And when feedback is delivered the right way, it can lead to powerful improvements to practice. So this is where you want to incorporate some exit tickets so you can use this information to improve sessions moving forward. Ongoing support in the form of job embedded instructional coaching is a way for teachers to have hands-on support so they can build capacity. Again, this is directly in alignment through our framework and our job through our growth model rather. And then providing timely feedback. So after you close your session and give them time to reflect and give you feedback, that's when you're going to get the most critical or the most useful information. Because if you wait too long, a week or two after the session, they're not going to have that information fresh in your mind. Bottom line, every educator wants feedback. You just have to make sure that you incorporate it in your professional learning session and it's delivered in the right manner. You also want to show exemplars. As I said before, the educators want to see how they can apply this information in their setting. So it's important for educators to see success through the lens of their fellow educators. So you want to curate a lot of artifacts that are then used to help others see how a strategy or idea has been successfully implemented. We did a library on Pick Your Pathway last year, where once a strategy or a tool or resource was taught in our Pick Your Pathway session, teachers could then record themselves utilizing that strategy or tool and then put the recording in the library so other educators could take a look at how the teachers were utilizing ListenWise, for example, in their sessions, or how they were utilizing Nearpod or Pear Deck successfully. So once that strategy was taught, they applied it in their setting, and then we curated a set of resources so teachers could see it successfully implemented. So just an idea that you might want to use, because it's really important for teachers to see your ideas successfully implemented in other settings. Expressing creativity in professional learning sessions, it helps to engage your audience, because if you're doing the same thing the same way, it becomes really boring. Boring not only for those who are engaging in professional learning, but also for you as a facilitator. So just make sure you spice things up a little bit and have different ways to express your creativity throughout each session. You could do thin or thick slides, scavenger hunts, Jamboards, Padlets, breakout rooms, philosophical chairs, data digs, etc. So you can kind of mix it up and be creative based on whatever content makes the most sense, or whatever strategy makes the most sense with your content, rather. Ultimately, you want to have your teams or the participants interact with data and collaborate amongst each other, and avoid telling them what the data is saying. Let them analyze it, get in there, figure it out for themselves, because they all have a very unique perspective. So give them the information, give them the data, but don't tell them what it's saying. Have them analyze it, interpret it themselves. That's a really strong way to engage in an activity and be creative about it through those data digs. You also want to personalize your professional learning session. Namely, you want to have the teachers take charge in their learning based on what their passion area is in. So you want to give choice in what areas they want to explore. So the move from what to who to emphasize a shift to ownership empowerment is really critical, because this creates buy-in, and the resources may be more applicable to their content area or interest. So just make sure as you're delivering content that is applicable and they can take something right away and apply it into their setting. Timing is also critical to success. So when it comes to professional learning, if you need to add something to the calendar, advocate for it. Advocate for what you feel you need and deserve, or work to create the types of experiences that educators will find value in. So make sure the content that you want to deliver is timed correctly, because again, if information might not be applicable right away, your audience might not engage in their learning. So timing is critical. Start on time, as we said before, as that will set the precedent, and do not go over the time you've allotted, because it will cause frustration and distrust with staff. So going back to our number one WIG, and I know I said this before, make sure you start and end on time and allow for breaks if it's longer than 90 minutes. Some ideas for design. For designing effective learning, professional learning spaces, designing both the delivery part of the presentation and the tech component is important. It's important that you have all the important elements that will engage your participants in continuous learning, leading to application. So we're going to touch on the rubric in just a few minutes, but you want to make sure that you're hitting on these best practices as you're delivering or planning the professional learning space, because we want to really focus on our staff feeling connected to each other, which will ultimately improve our culture, and we will hit on our WIG. When you're designing your professional learning spaces, make sure you have the design, content, story, and a little bit of humor if applicable, because that's, again, going to engage your audience and have space for collaboration, and the content is appropriate to them. Again, you want to make sure it's relevant. And then the design, how you're going to design engaging activities, how you're going to design your presentation itself to make sure it's interactive and creative. Always think about backwards planning when you're designing professional learning spaces. You want to focus on your scholar needs and the learning outcomes resulting in changes in teaching behavior. So start with what our scholars need to know and what the scholar outcomes are. So going back to our framework, what we want to achieve, and then you're going to start backwards planning from there. Also, learners need to understand the why of professional learning, and this is continuous improvement in the performance of all who impact scholar learning. We are engaging in professional learning, so we become better teachers, we become better educators, better staff who support the teachers so that they build capacity, use research-based strategies so that those tools will ultimately positively impact scholar achievement. They need to understand we're doing this because we're focusing on our scholars. We're improving ourselves. We're lifelong learners so that we can see an increase in our academic achievement. As I said, the why must be shared to create that buy-in, and you want to do a mix of professional learning, either give them some pre-work, do a flip model, maybe it's blended or synchronous so everyone gets their needs met. Maybe people learn better by doing a flip model and doing a checking for understanding quiz at the end, or maybe people need pre-work so they can preview the information prior to the live session. So just make sure you mix it up, because everyone, as we know, learns differently. So you want to make sure to give them that space to learn, which will ultimately create buy-in as well. I know that was a lot, so I just wanted to give you a quick recap on the top tips that we discussed today. In terms of the facilitating learning, you want to guide, engage as a facilitator, but you don't want to be the know-all, be-all. Everyone has something valuable to share. So you want to make sure that your professional learning is very collaborative and it's just not a sit and get. Plan and practice. Do all the things you have planned, time to do it, and add time to do it. We always run over on space. Time is never our friend. So just make sure you plan it out and then add at least 5 minutes onto that session, because you want to plan for collaborative discussions that might go over. You also want to prepare. Maybe you need to print it, however works best for you, and use it as a guide, or have speaker notes to keep you on track. Again, best practice is make sure you prepare well ahead of time and have the resources next to you as you are delivering the content, so you don't leave anything out. Another top tip that we discussed today: make sure you start and end on time, start on time, and never go over. Provide choice, give participants different options for thinking, honor expertise in the room. Again, everyone has something to share. Everyone is knowledgeable in each area. So make sure that you're giving space for them to share what they know, so that other staff members can learn from each other. You also want to design the learning space that is comfortable, pragmatic, and circular. And then feedback, another big item that we touched on today. Make sure you ask for it through exit tickets or checking for understanding, or throughout the presentation. Having them engage and if it's a lot of sit and get, just that lecture based, add some of those tools that we talked about to get some feedback. Maybe you need to revisit some things if there's a common theme that's maybe not hitting the mark, and you need to revisit and stop and readjust your presentation. This is the rubric that should be used before you deliver information, before you present any sort of professional learning session. We want to hit on the best practice for each of these areas, and you can use this as a self-assessment to make sure you've touched on each of these areas. And also what you could do is match, see how you're doing, matching it with your peer evaluator. So as you decide whoever is going to, or your peer is going to come in and observe you for a professional learning session or a training, if that's the way you want to go, you could use this as a self-assessment. And then when they take their observational notes, they could then score you using this rubric, and then you can compare your self-assessment to your peers to see how you match up. So it could be used when you do your growth plan peer evaluation. So these items should be covered in professional learning sessions. So make sure you use this rubric to plan ahead of time and self-assess prior to delivering the information. Last thing I want you to do is reflect on how our professional learning strategy connects to our blueprint. So use this as a resource, and then I'm going to have you add your thoughts, noticings, and wonderings to our Jamboard. So our Jamboard looks like this: connection to the blueprint. I want you to add give me a second to open it up here. How does our professional learning strategy connect to the blueprint? So you can just grab a sticky note here and add it on slide or frame 1. And then frame 2 is noticings and wonderings on the professional learning strategy itself on the slide deck. What do you notice as some ahas, or what are some areas that you could incorporate? And then some wonderings as we're learning through the together. What are some ways that we can incorporate even more successful strategies within our professional learning model, within our professional learning framework? So I'll definitely use your wonderings for feedback for myself. I know this was just a very quick overview on how to design effective professional learning strategies and spaces. So I love some quick, feedback on this exit ticket, which looks like this. I just lost my mouse. Here we go. So some of the information might not apply because it wasn't live, but you can just gauge if it were to be live, what the where I would rank from not at all to perfect amount of engagement or not effective to very effective, for example. So just kind of gauge these areas. I know it might not apply, so I'm not going to use that feedback per se, but I will definitely use the feedback down here on the open-ended questions and then on the Jamboard. So one more time, use the Jamboard to add your noticings and wonderings on frame 2, and then how our professional learning strategy connects to the blueprint for success, and just grab a sticky note and add your thoughts. I'll definitely use this feedback to plan future training. And then the exit ticket. And this is just for your perusal. This is the research. You can peruse on your own time. There's some links in there, so go ahead and click on those links to find a lot of the research behind effective professional learning. I really appreciate you taking the last, now it looks like almost 25 minutes with me today. And I appreciate that feedback as well through the Jamboard and through the exit ticket. I'll make sure that is linked in the speaker notes as well. But please let me know, or Deborah LaCroix know, if you have any questions, or if you need us to review any of your slide decks or your resources prior to delivering your presentation, and we'd be happy to review and support you with that. Or if you just want a second or third set of eyes to see what you might enhance, we'll be happy to share some of those tools with you as well. All right, friends, thank you again so much. And please reach out if you need anything. I look forward to that feedback, and I appreciate you watching this recording. Take care.